Hey there, welcome to your first note-taking experience. This is Unit 1, Section 1, and all the chapters will be divided into units. They don't necessarily correspond with the chapters in the textbook. So if you wanted to know, it is actually Chapter 1. But some of the other ones, Unit 3 is not Chapter 3. I'll keep you updated on that. So we're going to be starting out with just what the definition of anatomy and physiology is, because under the description, this class is physiology. But physiology is just one component of this class. It's actually anatomy and physiology. So what is the difference between the two? First of all, we have anatomy. And the anatomy is the study of the structures of the body. What's this? What's that? What's that hole? What fluid is in there? Basically what things are called. So doctors usually spend their first couple of years getting to know all the different bits and pieces of the body. They have a gross anatomy class where they get a big old dead body and they get to play with it and get to learn the names of everything inside of it. But then once they got that mastered, they move on to the next one, which is physiology. The physiology is how the body works. What chemicals are found in your stomach that are responsible for digesting your food? How does the neuron of your brain conduct an impulse to your muscle and cause you to move? So whenever we call this class physiology, we really mean to call it anatomy and physiology because you really can't have one without the other. So first thing we're going to take a look at are the levels that lead up to your body, because if we just look at our body as a whole thing, we're missing out on a lot. The body is made up of smaller, teeny tiny little chunks that all work together to make you who you are. So we can't really study the anatomy and the physiology without knowing the components that make up your body. So we're going to start on the tiniest, simplest level, which are atoms. Atoms, as you guys know, make up the periodic table. Hydrogen, helium, lithium, etc., etc. So if you took chemistry or physical science, you probably are well familiar with the periodic table and all the elements on there. And atoms, which are just the simplest unit, are made out of three things: protons, electrons, and neutrons. Remember, protons are the positively charged, electrons are negatively charged, and neutrons have no charge whatsoever. So we have about 92 naturally occurring elements on the periodic table, although it goes up to like 118. That's because a lot of those after 92 are man-made. So they are only found when scientists throw a couple of atoms together, they stick together for a fraction of a second, they go, hey look, we have a new element. Alright, now if I take these atoms and put them together in different combinations, I get molecules. Molecules are just combinations of atoms. And in our body, we see these molecules in the form of proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids. Not to say that those are the only ones, those are the most important ones. Without these things, our body would not exist. So here's an example over here of a molecule, specifically a nucleic acid. As you can see, this is a strand of DNA, and you can see the O's and the N's in there. Well, those are the elements or atoms that make up the molecules. Now, if I throw a whole bunch of proteins and carbs together, I might get an organelle. Now, you guys have all taken biology, so hopefully you're pretty familiar with organelles. Those are the nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, phospholipid bilayer, cytoskeleton, all those things that you learned way back when. And these little organs is what organelle actually stands for. These little organs act like your organs do for your body. So you have a stomach that digests food for your body. You have a lysosome that digests food for your cell. So that's why they are called organelles, just little versions of organs. Now when I put all the organelles together, I get the cell, or the cellular level, which is the basic building block of any living organism. And so they come in all sorts of different types and sizes and functions and shapes, depending on what part of the body that they're used for. So a neuron is going to be long and skinny, whereas a muscle cell might be long and spindly or short and fat, depending on what type of work it has to do. So we have lots of different cells inside of our body, but we have even more bacterial cells in and on us than we have our own cells. That's kind of creepy. Now if I put a whole bunch of cells together, I get tissues. Tissues are groups of similar cells that work together and perform a particular function. It's kind of like in the animal world, it's the equivalent of a population. And so here are four types of tissues that we find in the human body. We have connective tissue, epithelial tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. And all of these tissues are made out of cells. These are white blood cells and red blood cells and platelets and things that all make up a special type of connective tissue. So here's the 4 different types right here. Now, if you put a whole bunch of tissues together, what are you going to get? You're going to get an organ. And we've got lots of different organs inside of our body. Of course, you know the main ones: lungs, heart, stomach, but there's weird ones. The pineal gland, the spleen, and all sorts of funky ones that we'll get to learn. And they do a particular job for your whole entire body, just like an organelle does for the cell. Now, if I put a whole bunch of organs together that work together, I get an organ system. An organ system, as you can see from the picture in here, are groups of organs that work together to do a particular job. Now, every one is dependent on every other one. So even though for the digestive system, we group these guys together, well, the kidneys are required for the digestive system to work correctly. So we just go for what their main function is, but they are all dependent on one another. There are 11 systems that we'll get to learn in some of the notes coming up. And then, if I throw all these organ systems together, pack them all in nice and tight, I get an organism. And an organism is just the total of all the organs all smushed together and create life, create the organism itself. So for our class, it'll be the human being or the kitty cat, because we will be getting to know a heck of a lot about the anatomy of a cat. If you like cats, I understand, I do too, but it's also really cool looking at what they're made out of and seeing what they're like on the inside. So you do need to know the levels going either from small to big or big to small. So cells on up to organisms, or organisms down to cells, and some basic examples of each type as you go. Alrighty, so I believe, let me just check, yep, that is it for the first set of notes. So 7 minutes, not bad. So if you need to go back and listen to this again, add drawings, add notes. You want to write down what is written down, obviously, but pay attention to the other stuff I say, because that's just as important. So the fact that there are 11 body systems, kind of important there. All right, so we will take a little, you could call it a quiz. It's called a note check, and the note checks are going to be done in order to make sure that you actually took notes. And you don't get to use anybody else's help, so you can't borrow anybody else's notes to get it done. It all depends on if you took your notes on time. So tomorrow we'll take care of that, and then we'll answer any questions that you have on this first set of notes. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye-bye.